Hare Krishna, everyone. I hope you can hear me clearly. We want to thank you all for joining this week's Pandavasena weekly talks. We want to thank everyone who's been joining every single week. And for those who have just joined us this week, we warmly invite you and thank you also. So we have these talks every week, and we've had many great personalities speaking, such as His Holiness Sachinanda Swami, His Grace Navin Krishna Prabhu, Her Grace Vishaka Prabhu, who's on this call also, and His Grace Sutapa Prabhu. And this week we have a very esteemed speaker who will be speaking on the topic of the victim mentality. And that is His Holiness Bhakti Vijñana Goswami. So for those who don't know about Bhakti Vijñana Goswami, he took to spiritual life in 1980, and he has been a great leader within the Krishna conscious movement since 1997. And he's also helped to create a great foundation and supportive mood within Russia. And this has been seen by award that was given to Maharaj on July 1st, 2010. This award was for his contribution in strengthening Russian-Indian friendly relations and for his contribution to the popularization of the spiritual culture, literary heritage of India. So we all hope you really take this opportunity to absorb Maharaj's great knowledge and advice for us today. And if you have any questions, please don't be afraid to write them down on the chat. For those who want to ask their questions, write them down on the chat. And at the end of the session, we will call out your names, unmute you, and you can ask your question. If you do feel shy to speak, then you can always privately message myself with your question, and we will ask the question for you. Also, because of time, we may not be able to answer all questions. So if there are questions which are very similar, then we'll combine them and ask them, and we'll get a nice rounded answer for you. So without further ado, we invite His Holiness Bhakti Vijñana Goswami to speak to us on this topic. And I hope you all enjoy and absorb. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. I'm very happy to meet with you in this virtual space on Zoom during this time of coronavirus. And I think it's a very appropriate topic which was given to me by the organizers of this program, victim mentality. First of all, because it's very prominent in general in human society. Second of all, because it's very prominent specifically in this day and age. Because everyone is trying to blame somebody else for his problems or failures. And there's always somebody to be blamed. It could be the government, it could be other people, it could be spiritual organization like ISKCON. There's one more advantage for all the ISKCON members. They can blame their spiritual masters. It's also a great opportunity, which is unique for us. It's very much common to blame others. And in this little talk, I want to examine this propensity and the roots of this propensity, and moreover, the consequences, very ferocious consequences of this very natural human propensity to blame others for his faults, for his failures, for his problems, for his pains and sufferings. And to introduce this talk, or to actually give the life to this talk, I will read the verse number 50 from the 23rd chapter of the 11th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, which is entitled The Song of the Avanti Brahmana. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jaya Mudiraye Nashta Prayeshva Badrishu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavatyutama Shloke Bhaktir Bhagavati Naishtiki Yam Pravrajantam Anupetam Apeta Krityam Dvaipayana Virahakatara Juhava Putreti Tam Mayatayo Taravo Dinedus Tam Sarva Bhuta Hridayam Munimanatosmi. So we will read this verse from the Srimad Bhagavatam. Janastu hetu sukha dukkhayos chet kim atmanas chatra hi bhaumayostat jihvam kvachit sandasati svadadbhis tat vedanayam katamaya kupyet. Translation. If you say that these people who are the cause, are the cause of my happiness and distress, then where is the place of the soul in such conception? This happiness and distress pertain not to the soul, but to the interactions of material bodies. If someone bites his tongue with his own teeth, at whom he can become angry in this suffering. Purport. Although bodily pleasure and pain are felt by the soul, one must tolerate such duality, understanding it to be a creation of one's own material mind. If one accidentally bites his own tongue or lip, he cannot become angry and pull out his own teeth. Similarly, all living beings are individual parts and parcels of God and thus non-different from each other. All of them are meant to serve the Supreme Lord in spiritual equality. If the living beings give up their master's service and instead quarrel among themselves, they will be forced to suffer by the laws of nature. If the conditioned souls establish artificial relationship of affection based on the material body and having nothing to do with God, then time itself will destroy their relationship and they will be subjected to further sufferings. But if the individual living entity understand each other to be of the same family and having connection with the Supreme Lord, their mutual friendship will develop. Thus, one should not exhibit anger that will be harmful to oneself and others. Although the Brahmana was receiving kind offerings of charity from some people and being harassed and beaten by others, he denied that these people were the ultimate cause of his happiness and distress, for he was fixed on the platform of self-realization beyond the material body and mind. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Janastu hetu sukha dukkhayos chet kim atmanas chatra hi bhaumayos tat jihvam kvachit sandasati swadadbhis tat Vedanayam katamaya kupyat. If you say that these people are the cause of my happiness and distress, then where is the place of the soul in such conception? This happiness and distress pertain not to the soul, but to the interactions of material bodies. If someone bites his tongue with his own teeth, at whom he can become angry in his sufferings. So this very beautiful and instructive chapter of the 11th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam starts from a very important question asked by Uddhava, or rather from a very radical statement made by Lord Krishna himself. In the previous chapter, the chapter number 22 of the 11th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, Lord Krishna is explaining the illusory nature of soul's bondage. This is a very difficult point to understand. Asanga hi ayam purushaha. Upanishads say that Purusha, living entity, spirit, soul, is asanga. It's not really connected with matter. It's not, has really anything to do, it doesn't have anything to do with matter, with material body. And nevertheless, we see how strong is our attachment to matter, how strong is our attachment to body, how strong is our attachment to our material relationship, and how difficult it is to get free. And therefore, it's a very difficult point to understand, because the point is being here that we're already free. We're not really connected. And all the connections which we feel and which we experience practically on a every minute basis is illusion. So how to understand this illusion, which is so much real and so much prominent in our consciousness? And therefore, Lord Krishna, in explaining this philosophy to Uddhava, goes into the great land by trying, giving different examples to facilitate our understanding. How the soul is not really connected with the body, but still, nevertheless, is somewhat connected with the body, and what is the nature of this connection. Lord Krishna gives a very important and beautiful example. He says that the emotions which the soul experiences, and the soul does experience emotions. It is said by Krishna in Bhagavad Gita that bhaktritva, the experiencing capacity, is within the soul. The kartritva, the agency, the ability to act, is within the material nature. But the bhaktritva, the experiential capacity, the capacity to experience different emotions, is within the soul. So how is it if the activity is being done by something, and how we experience something which we are not really doing? So Lord Krishna gives a very beautiful example. He says that in a similar way as on the stage, when we see some performance of the stage and somebody is beautiful, is singing very beautifully or dancing very beautifully, then the audience, becoming more and more involved into this performance, starts experiencing the same emotions. And we all know, people are sitting there in their armchairs, but at the same time their legs are dancing and they start, moving from and to in the rhythm of the music, and basically they're dancing inside. So the being sucked in this performance, and they experience the same thing which is being experienced, or even sometimes stronger, according to the rasa theory. According to the rasa theory, the rasa can only be experienced by the spectator, not by the performer. At least some theorists of rasa are of this opinion, that performance of the play, they cannot experience emotion to the fullest extent. It's only available to the spectators, to the witnesses of these emotions. So Lord Krishna gives this example, and this example is supposed to understand as the nature of our experience. We, the soul, are witnessing all the emotions produced in the mind, all the different waves of emotions, very powerful energy of emotions. And emotions are nothing but energy in motion. The English word emotion is coming from the Latin word emovere, from the Latin root emovere, which means to move. So emotion is the very strong dynamic force within our mind, and we all know, if we are moved by some emotion, if it's a strong emotion, be it the emotion of anger or emotion of fear or emotion of lust or emotion of, I don't know what else, grief, we become completely subdued by this emotion, overwhelmed by this emotion. We cannot actually do anything, help anything to overcome this emotion. It's such a strong force which carries away our consciousness. Our whole consciousness is completely sucked in this emotion. So Lord Krishna gives this example to give us some understanding that the soul, being the witness within the mind, the soul is witnessing what is going on in the mind, on the stage of the mind, and identifies with this very beautiful performance. As much as the spectator of the performance is identifying easily. It's called in the rasa theory sadarnikaran, when we become identical with what is going on the stage. And we all know, we all have experience, if we see the cinema, some shadows and colors are produced on the white screen, and they're moving in the white screen. But somehow or other, we are sitting there and we are experiencing very strong forces inside, reflected emotions from the screen, fear or anger or love or something else. So this is exactly the situation of the soul, and but Lord Krishna does not stop there. He gives actually a series of other similes to explain what is going on exactly when we identify with this body and with these emotions and with this mind, and why it is a vicious circle, why it is so difficult to break free from these shackles of the identification with the body. We all know that, I may be sitting there in the cinema, but when it becomes too much, I just, get up and walk out. Or I just eat my popcorn and become relaxed. It's somewhat easy to distance oneself from what is going on the screen or on the stage. But when it comes to the stage of the mind, it's much more difficult. Sometimes we would like to walk out, but it's not possible. We're just sitting there completely, chained to this armchair of our identification. And we cannot help but to see the whole horror movie till the end, which is not always a happy end. On the contrary, it's always an unhappy end. We die and we witness our own death and we become horrified. How it is possible that I'm dying? It's not possible. And, the whole drama evolves or erupts at this moment. So therefore Lord Krishna gives us some other very interesting hints what's going on. And it's very important to understand immediately after this verse number 53, where he explains, gives this simile, he gives three similes in the next two verses, 54 and 55 of 22nd chapter. And he says, I will not read Sanskrit because I believe there is not many people who understand it anyway. So he says, the soul's material life, his experience of sense gratification is actually false or descendant of Dasharha. Just like trees' appearance of quivering when the trees are reflected in agitated water, or like the earth's appearance of spinning due to one's spinning his eyes around, or like the world of fantasy or dream. When Krishna gives 4 examples in a row, there must be some very important message behind these examples. These examples cannot explain the same thing. Of course, sometimes to drive the point home, he may give the same example again and again and again and again to stress the point. But it's not the case in this particular story which we're reading with you. This first example which I gave and explained already of identification with the play of the mind is a general example. But the 3 other examples in the next 2 verses are explaining different aspects of our false identity. Our false identity or identification with the body, mind, and our emotions, which are there in the mind. They're basically, it's called false ego, but false ego has 3 very important aspects. These 3 important aspects of false ego I explained in the 3rd canto of Srimad Bhagavatam by Lord Kapiladev in his explanation of Sankhya philosophy, where he says that false ego has 3 aspects, which is kartritva, karanatva, and karyatva. Kartritva, karanatvam, and karyatvam. Kartritva is one aspect of false ego, false identity. I'm the doer. And yeah, I will explain a little later what it means in more details. I'm the doer of my activities. I'm, the achiever of success in this life. I'm either, basically, there are 2 aspects of this. Either I'm a sufferer or I'm an enjoyer. I'm the doer of my actions, or I'm a failure. So it's very much connected with this victim sort of mentality. I am the failure and I have to blame others. But we will explain in more details a little later. Let's first understand how our false identity works. This false ego is very strong fellow, and it has these 3 aspects. First aspect is identification with the doership. And for that, to explain the falsity of this conception that I'm the doer, Lord Krishna gives the first example. The first example is basically when the boat is moving on the river and we are on the boat, we see the trees, and it seems to us, it appears to us that the trees are moving. Or the trees are standing still and we look in the reflection of the trees in the water, and the water is flowing, and it appears to us that the reflection, the trees are moving. In any case, either whatever explanation we will take from the Sanskrit, either way, the first explanation with the body is better because it's more clear. What is going on here? We transfer the quality of action into something which is actually not acting. The trees are not moving. There is no action in the trees. They are standing still on the bank of the river, but we look at them, and because of the illusion, because we are moving ourselves, there is some disconnection. Yeah. Okay. Because of this illusion, because we are moving, but we are looking at something which is not moving. It seems like that this is what is being moved, or what is moving. So in a similar way, we are not acting. In the material world, the soul is not acting, the body is acting. The soul is inactive, but this inactive soul assumes the qualities of action of the body. This kartritva, which is being performed by the body, the agency, the body, the material nature is moving. But we think, I'm the doer, I'm doing activity. So that's the significance of the first example of non-moving trees, which seem to us that they're moving. The next example is even more beautiful and even more important for us to understand. The next example is that when you start moving, when you start rotating around, or you just rotate your own head, and then you stop, and your eyes are still moving, and it looks to you as if the whole earth is moving. Whereas the earth is not moving, it's your eyes are moving. So it seems to be the same example, but it's not the same example, and therefore Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur gives another example which makes it more clear what is meant by Krishna while he is explaining or giving this simile or this metaphor for us to understand. He gives another example, perhaps little more easy for us to relate. If somebody becomes crazy or possessed by this ghost, he starts manifesting different qualities, and we look at him and we think that this is the quality of the person, whereas this is not the quality of the person, this is the quality of the ghost who possessed himself. So the second example is the example of the second aspect of false ego, which is karanatva, when we identify with our qualities. The first is general identification. I identify myself, or I think myself, I'm the doer, I'm the doing. The second identification is that how we think about ourselves. I'm a very kind person, I'm a very generous person, or I'm a very cruel person, and I'm very determined person, and I'm a very strong person, I'm this, I'm that. We always attribute different qualities which we have, the qualities of the mind, to ourselves. And this becomes the strengthening, another chain which keeps us bound to this body and to these experiences. It's basically, oh, I'm very sad, I'm a very sad person. And, if you repeat it enough number of times, you become sad. And you will not be able to break free from this quality. You will always be sad. You will always see the world through this lens, lens of the qualities, Or sometimes people, I'm very naive. Yeah. You repeat it enough number of times and you become naive. Yeah. It's basically a game which we are playing with ourselves, and therefore Krishna gives this second example about the eyes rolling. The rolling is the quality of the eyes, and it's not by chance that Krishna gives this example with the eyes. Basically, we see the whole world through the eyes of our qualities, which are not our qualities. We are pure spirit soul. Everyone is kind, but everyone is beautiful. Everyone is absolutely amazing. But because we have this strong identification with the mental qualities which we acquired during our sojourn into this material world, we become that. I become greedy or angry person, or whatever person, sad person, or joyful person, enthusiastic. I'm very enthusiastic, and I'm always playing this role of being enthusiastic. I'm bubbling with enthusiasm. But this is illusion. Too much identification with this doesn't help, because it just becomes really the eyes through which we see the world, and we see the whole world through these eyes. And as much as the person who is rotating around himself see that the whole world is moving, and in the same way we see the same qualities in other people, and we relate to these other qualities, and we basically reinforce by seeing or interacting with the world through these qualities or through this mind. We're reinforcing our false ego. As much as interacting with the world through this quality of kartritva, I'm the doer, I'm achiever, I'm this, and I will achieve success, or I'm victim. I'm very nice, look at me, everyone is just so bad and mistreating me, and I look at me, just look at me, just love me. So there's two ways of how we want to attract attention of other people, either being the hero and achiever, or being the victim. The second one is easier, therefore it's more common. To achieve something, you really have to work hard. To be victim, you don't have to do anything. You just have to always point out, see how beautifully I am suffering, see how unjustly I was treated, see how bad other people are, see how I'm suffering, just see it, see it. So this is another aspect of false ego. And what I want to say, and this is actually what Krishna is implying by saying this, when we're interacting through these qualities, we are more or less reproducing this false ego, reinforcing false ego. We become like this. We do become like this. Yes, we do become stingy or angry or sad person, and we cannot break free, really cannot break free. So, and the third example which Krishna gives in these two verses, 54 and 55, is about bhaktritva, is about experiencing capacity, where he says that sometimes one see a dream, he's in a dream, and he sees in a dream that he's suffering. In reality, he's not suffering. He's laying on a cozy bed in an AC room in a 5-star hotel. But in his mind, there is some turmoil is going on, and he really, identifies himself with all these emotions, and it really seems to him that he is suffering. So again, by giving the general example of identifying what is going on in the mind, Krishna elaborates on this by giving these 3 examples. That our false ego is fooling us, is actually cheating us by developing this 3 sort of identity, identifying with the body, with the activities of the body, with this action, agency, identifying with the body, with the qualities of the body and with the qualities of the mind, and karyatva, identifying with the experiences of this body. Whatever the body is experiences, suffering or enjoying, or the mind is experiencing. We identify with this and we say, yeah, this is me. This is what I am. And therefore, these 3 very important examples is necessary for us to understand the three aspects of false identity and how this false identity binds us, how the false identity keeps us bound to this material body, material mind, and actually material life in general. The repetition of birth and death when we cannot break through. And therefore, Krishna more or less concludes in the verses 58 and 59, he concludes that one has to understand very much this game of the mind, or this game of the false ego, rather. The false ego which identifies with the mind. And one has to, instead of reinforcing false ego, interact with this material world in such a way that would ultimately weaken and destroy false ego, destroy false identity. So the program, the karmic program, what we call karma, or what astrologers will tell us, is more or less this program of the false ego, which is the sum total of some scars accumulated during our traveling in this material world. And we are enacting this program in different way, displaying all these qualities. But the problem with the karma is that it's a vicious circle. I have the false identity and I strengthen this false identity. I basically reconfirm this false identity every day, every minute of my life. I am like this. Yes, I'm suffering. Yes, this is me. So Krishna says there is only one way to break free from this vicious circle is to start behaving or interacting with the material world, with the people in the material world, and first and foremost, with the events of our life, with the happenings of our life, in a certain way, which will, instead of reinforcing our false ego, will ultimately destroy false identity. And that's what Krishna explains in this verses 58 and 59. Even though neglected, insulted, ridiculed, or envied by bad men, or even though repeatedly agitated by being beaten, tied up, or deprived one's occupation, spat upon, or polluted with urine by ignorant people, one who desires the highest goal of life should, in spite of all these difficulties, use his intelligence to keep himself safe on the spiritual platform. So Krishna gives a very radical and drastic statement. He says, instead of trying to, identify with all these bad occurrences which are there in everyone's life, fortunately for us, instead of rejecting them, instead of revolting against them, instead of basically revolting against God, we should embrace them, we should welcome them. And we should use them as an opportunity to keep ourselves on a spiritual platform. I'm saying this, and at the same time, I'm very afraid in my mind. What if this happens with me? Krishna goes to such an extent, he says, if somebody urinates on you, you should tolerate it. It's very difficult for us to tolerate if somebody spits at us. It's very difficult to tolerate for us if somebody says something bad about us. It's so difficult for us to tolerate if we hear that somebody dared to say something bad about us 3 years back. What to speak about doing this at the moment. But Krishna says, no, if somebody comes to you and urinates on you, you say, yes, thank you very much. I'm very grateful to you. And the commentators of this verse, they say, throughout the history, many of the above mentioned inconveniences have been experienced by devotees of the Lord. One who is advanced in God consciousness does not allow himself to become obsessed with the material body, even in such conditions, but rather keeps his mind fixed on the spiritual platform through proper intelligence. Sometimes we even wonder why spiritual people experience so many bad things. Jesus Christ was crucified. Haridas Thakur was beaten on 22 marketplaces, and so many examples of this, so many examples. Ramanujacharya has to flee from Sri Rangam, and Kuresh, his disciple, was experienced of pain of being deprived of his eyes. His eyes were plucked out by the infidel king Krinikanta, and so many other things. Sometimes we have a very false understanding of spiritual life, that the spiritual life has to be, very nice and very beautiful, and the cakes should be every day, and Mahaprasadam plates should be there, and this is the sum and substance of spiritual life, to eat sweet prasadam or something like this. Many of us have this unrealistic ideas and understanding. Krishna says, no, welcome to spiritual life. If you want to experience the real taste, spiritual taste, be prepared. Be prepared to the tests, to sufferings, to difficult situations. Be prepared that people will betray you, that people will blame you for something which you have not been doing. Be prepared that people will blaspheme you, will prepare. And then, this is, we can very much experience this nowadays. The internet is there, and all the sites are there, and all our detractors are there, and they blaspheme everyone. And, the beautiful magazine is there, back to Srila Prabhupada, and you just read it. And you will know everything about everyone, and everyone will be revealed his faults. So he says this, and when Uddhava hears this, he becomes stunned. Even Uddhava didn't like to hear this. What to speak about us? Nobody likes to hear this. Nobody really likes to experience what to speak of, having the first-hand experience of this. Even by witnessing this, what is going on with other devotees, we become really morose and afraid. Sometimes we see the sufferings of other devotees undergoing, and it's almost impossible for us to understand why it's going on like this. Why? But Krishna says that this is actually necessary for us to slacken the grip of our false identity. As I said, the false identity has a very strong grip, and it doesn't really let us out. And therefore, what Krishna says, Atmanatmanam udharet, one has to free oneself from the mind by the mind. One has to free oneself from this false identity by the mind, by the force of the mind, by trying to really understand that the cause of this suffering is not other people, but our attachment to the mind itself. Ultimately, all these bad experiences, which everyone has, inevitably, everyone in this material world will have to go through sufferings to one extent or another. It doesn't have to be drastic, but sometimes, but ultimately, we do experience a lot of pain, a lot of suffering, mental suffering, agonies, relationship problems, all this kind of stuff, this pandemic things and everything else. Ultimately, this everything is necessary for us to disidentify with the mind, to understand that the suffering is taking place with the mind. And the suffering caused or inflicted by other people is not within our control. Other people will act as much as they, the way they will act, but our reaction to all these sufferings is within our control. So and for that, Lord Krishna, by answering the Uddhava's question, how is that possible? How is that possible? Please tell me, how is that possible to go through this? Uddhava says, so best of all speakers, please explain to me how I may properly understand this. O soul of the universe, the conditioning of one's personality in material life is very strong, and therefore it's very difficult even for a learned man to tolerate the offenses committed against them by ignorant people. Only your devotees who are fixed in your loving service and who have achieved peace by residing at your lotus feet are able to tolerate such offenses. And Krishna, listening to what Uddhava says, he says, no, you're wrong, Uddhava. Even my devotees, they also suffer, that somebody insults them. He says, no, there is no exception to this rule. If somebody insults, Krishna gives in the next chapter, by beginning, before telling the story of Avanti Brahmana, Krishna says that, the sharp words are more difficult to tolerate than the sharp arrows. Because sharp arrows, when they pierce your heart, they inflict pain, but this pain is short-lived. It may be there for 1-2 days, 1-2 months, but the pain inflicted by the sharp words, insulting words of other people, will be there for years. The agony, the mental agony, can be there for years. The pain of it. Krishna says, everyone without exception, is when he's insulted, it's very difficult for him. But what to do? What to do for that? Krishna, he starts explaining this story of Avanti Brahmana. And the story of Avanti Brahmana is a very, how shall I say it, is a very sobering sort of experience. While reading this story, as much as any other story of Srimad Bhagavatam, we try to experience this story. If we read it from the very distant perspective, it will not really help us. We have to relive the same story, reenact the same story within our life. So we all probably know the story that there was a Brahmana who was very stingy, greedy, and not a very good character, not at all. Everyone hated him. He was so stingy that he couldn't even, and he was wealthy, but he couldn't enjoy himself. He wouldn't spend money for himself. He was just, miserly, and he was suffering, and ultimately he lost all his wealth, and everyone just rejected him, and he accepted sannyas. This is how you accept sannyas. And then he started wandering in the world, and exactly the same thing happened with him, which Krishna said to Uddhava. He was driven away from his home by the relatives because relatives hated him, and he was beaten by people. He was begging, and sometimes people would give him something, and but oftentimes people would just mock at him and would say, you are pretender, you put all this red clothes, and ultimately you're sense enjoyer, and they would spat at him and would spit at him and would, urinate at him, and sometimes would chain him with the chains and do all kinds of things. And during all these experiences, what he was saying what he said there in the verse which we read. Everything is happening within the mind. I shouldn't blame others. I shouldn't blame. He basically said whom we should not blame. He said we should not blame other people. In the verse 42, he gave the list of who we should not consider ourselves to be a victim of. We should not, these people are not the cause of my happiness and distress. So other people are not the cause of my happiness or distress. I am not the victim of these people. Neither the demigods, no, not the demigods which are sending rain or sending heat, like now in India. They are not the cause of my suffering. Nor my own body. I should not blame my body. Not the planets, not even my karma, nor the providence. My past work, no. My past work has nothing to do with it. No time. Amazing, isn't it? Because we usually say that this is, if it's not other people, then it's karma work. He says, no, no, no. Don't blame your karma either. Don't blame time. Don't blame planets. Don't blame your body. Rather, it is the mind alone that causes happiness and distress and perpetuates the rotation of material life. So as soon as we're trying to put the blame of something which is not really the cause is this, identification with the mind. Because I identify with the mind, whatever is happening with the mind becomes mine experience. And if I want to get free from this, I should find the real cause. The real cause is this connection with the mind, and I should weaken this connection with the mind. I should use these opportunities, all these events in my life, all these happenings, everything which is basically happening within my life, I should use as an opportunity to slacken the connection with the mind. I am not this mind. And therefore, I should try to tolerate, and because it's very difficult to start tolerating with the pain, try to tolerate your happiness first. Try not to identify with the comfortable situation which is there, with the happiness of the mind. Because by doing this, whatever emotion is there in the mind, if you identify with this, it only, as I said, and I will repeat it again and again and again, will reinforce your false identity. Sometimes I deal with the very concrete case stories. It may sound like a theory, but it's not a theory. It's a very relevant and practical philosophy. Sometimes we can, I have to deal with my own problems, of course, with the events which are taking place within my mind, and it's difficult to tolerate. But luckily I have the advantage of watching from outside of what is happening in the minds of other people. And I can say with all assurance that what is happening in my mind is nothing in comparison with what is happening in the minds of other people. It's difficult to tolerate what is going on here, but what people are going through, if you really get into it, into their mental conditioning, and how tightly they identify with all these emotions which are going on, it's just impossible. And sometimes, sometimes I cry. I have to confess to you. Sometimes I have to cry because I see that people are suffering, and at the same time I see that all these sufferings are self-inflicted. Completely, absolutely, from beginning to end, self-inflicted. Inflicted by the mind, and they are just playing along with the mind. They just really exactly what Avanti Brahmana is saying here in these words, exactly is going on in everyone's life. But because we see everything through this lens of the mind, we don't see we don't, it's very difficult for us to witness it from the neutral point of view. Just recently, I experienced some example to make it more vivid or more concrete. There was, like there was one person, one devotee, and he has some difficulties in relationship, in a very important relationship in his life, the most important relationship, let us say, and is experiencing, immense difficulties because, and he always says that, that this person, I want to love him and I do something, but he's so cruel to me, and it just doesn't work, and it's always, I get so much, and he always puts the blame on another person, even indirectly. He sometimes says, no, of course it's me, I am wrong, I'm wrongdoer, but it's basically the same song. Unfortunately, not the song of Avanti Brahman, a completely different song. The song of a conditioned soul is being sang, this is so bad, this is so bad, and he is so conditioned. But what really happened in this particular case, he had a very deep and trauma in his childhood, very traumatic childhood, with very emotional parents who were quite unpredictable in his life. And, they more or less programmed him for the better relationship, more or less installed in him very strong program for this, wrong expectation. He always, when he enters into some relationship, especially if this is the relationship with some authority figures, somebody who's very important, he immediately starts transferring all this experience of the past in this, and he expects already this. He already expects that this person will behave in a certain way with him, and whatever this person tells him or does with him, he interprets in a certain way through the lens of these expectations. And this person, I know both of them very well. The person with whom he has difficulties, he's a very kind person, he's a very loving person, very caring person. But every little word said by this person to the devotee whom I'm describing is being reinterpreted by him in terms of his false identity, in terms of the program of his false ego. And he already knows, I'm the victim, I'm the sufferer, I will suffer. And how I will suffer? I will suffer from all these people. And, he enters into this relationship, he needs it, and he programs this relationship completely whimsically in such a way that whatever is coming from this person to him, being filtered through the lens of his false ego or through the lens of his mind, only reinforces this, only confirms these expectations. This is how karma works, and he just cannot break through this. He cannot look objectively into this. So what's happening with him, again, to make it more vivid and more understandable and perhaps more practical, more applicable to our own mind. I was trying to explain to him how the emotions are self-perpetuating. He has he has an emotional lens within the mind. As I said, this is a part of our false identity, the experiences which we have in the mind. We attach to this experience. We attach to a particular type of experience. We attach to particular qualities which we have, and we attach to being the doer. So this is three aspects of the mind. So we have these emotions which we are experiencing all the time, and if nothing from the outside world confirms with this emotion, we will reinterpret reality. That's what people are doing on a daily basis. They take the reality, filter it through the lens of false ego, completely reinterpret the reality in terms of the false ego, and voila, here you are. The reality confirms your false ego. Yeah, I'm right. Yes, I'm right. The world is like this. The world is bad. The world is this. The world is that. And it only everything which we experience in the world becomes the wood, the firewood, to make stronger the fire of our sufferings, mental sufferings. We take it and put it there in this fire which is already there. Amazing. We turn everything which is there into this fire because we are on fire. And everything becomes the firewood for this fire of our mental agonies and sufferings. So what's happening, coming back to the story, for some time I was trying to kind of mediate and try to understand, and because the person is very intelligent, this devotee is very intelligent and introspective, and he was trying to understand what's going on, and he was, to a certain extent was understanding, and there was very nice and productive meeting, and few very productive meetings or steps towards this authority figure in his life. Actually, it's his spiritual master, as I said. But in any case, so there was a very good meetings, and was very good progress, and I was so happy that it's going on, that something, maybe he will break free from this vicious circle which is inflicted. But as soon as this was finished, and again they distanced, the mind started working. The mind again started his song. Oh yeah, no, that cannot be, no. And the mind started picking up different words in these meetings, which he didn't even notice. Oh, he said this. Oh, he said this. Oh, that means this and this. And within just a few days, very short period of time, the whole result of this seemingly successful re-establishing relationship, binding, rebinding, meeting, was completely smashed by the mind. Everything was eradicated, and one again becomes the sufferer. The same emotions came back, and with the new force started raging there, and and basically, in one sense, this person, again, he's a very nice person. He doesn't blame others. He says, "Oh, I'm so bad. I'm so bad. I'm bad. I'm useless. I'm hopeless. Absolutely hopeless. No hope in this life. Maybe next life, or maybe in 2 lives, or in 3 lives. Maybe if my parents will be better. Maybe this, maybe that." Nothing will happen. Even if your parents are the best parents in the world, even if you're born to Nanda and Yashoda, of course it will not happen, but still you will have this victim mentality within yourself. You will find some problems in this relationship as well. It may be difficult to imagine, but the mind is extremely capable of doing impossible possible. You can do it, no problem. The mind is like this. If we take it seriously, and this victim mentality is there, because when we are identifying with the mind, we basically, as I said, being the victim is the best way to attract sympathy. When we're a little child, today I experienced this. I will confess to you, because to get rid of some bad things, you have to confess to everyone. Today, monkey attacked me. The monkey, from bat jumped on me and scratched my stomach. And it was not so bad. There was some little blood was there, but not so bad. But I really noticed how I thought, oh my goodness, I'm a victim. I have to show it to everyone else. They have to see how I suffer. They have to really, say that, express sympathy as much as the child. The child, he uses all these so-called sufferings. Even if there is no suffering, he invents sufferings just to attract attention. And the same thing is going on with the mind. The same game with the mind, within the mind is going on, this victim mentality. And then we blame others, and we find enough reasons, serious enough reasons. What happens in this case, when we have this very strong connection with the mind, when the mind is conditioned in such a way, then the intelligence becomes the slave of the mind. The intelligence starts working for the mind. The mind has this perception. Like I said, if somebody is a very fearful person, and there is absolutely no reasons in the environment to fear, the intelligence will find the reasons. Because the intelligence, being the slave of the mind, will invent something. I also deal with such cases on a regular basis. There is absolutely no reason to fear, but the fear is there. How to rationalize the fear? The intelligence starts working, starts rationalizing the fear. Perhaps I am fearful because of this, or because of that, or because of this, or because of that. In the same way, we're suffering. We experience suffering because of the strong connection, of the strong identification with the mind. We feel this suffering, and our intelligence immediately starts working. Who is to be blamed? Somebody else to be blamed. And as Avanti Brahmana said, no, please don't blame anyone. Nobody. It's only going on within your mind. It's only going on within your mind. It's in the same way as you bite your tongue or you bite your lip. Who is to be blamed? You shouldn't blame anyone. You just bit your tongue. Okay, fine. If you make a drama out of it and try to find who is this or that, it will not help. It will not help. The sooner you forget about this. So what happens, which is the most important thing which I want to say, and I will, bring this talk to a close soon. What happens is that when we identify too much with the mind, with all these events, we ruminate. We become completely self-centered. In this condition, it's not possible to think about Krishna. It's not possible to think about anyone else. It's actually the trick of the false ego to put us back in the center. This is how the mind works. The mind works always. He wants to put us in the center, and he does it through all these mental tricks and things like this. It doesn't help because it keeps us bound to this world, bound to this false identity, bound to this body, bound to this mind, bound. As soon as we start blaming anyone, we should know what we are doing. We are perpetuating our sufferings in this material world. Nothing else. Willingly. Self-inflicted sufferings. As much as, this whole thing which I explained, I didn't explain in details, but I was myself amazed how the person, without any reason in reality, is suffering. Why? Because of the mind. Because of the identification of the mind. Because of this game of the mind. perpetual game of the mind. So this victimization, this mentality of the victim, the feeling that I'm the victim, that somebody is inflicted pain on us. Who is that? It's the identification of the mind. And if you do it, if you prefer, you have to be very clear. You have to be extremely clear. I want to do it. Then do it. If you're ready to face the consequences, do it. No problem. All blessings are there. The Lord is giving you blessings. He created the whole world for you to suffer because you want to do it. But if you don't want to do it, then also make the same determination within your mind. I don't want to do it. I don't want to blame anyone else. I will tolerate whatever will happen with me. I will tolerate, I will try to objectively look into what is happening in the mind from the objective point of view, not from subjective point of view. It's not me who is suffering, the mind is suffering. It's difficult, it's very difficult. Therefore, we should really, as I said, start doing it in the conditions which are more or less nice and conducive. At this point, we should start looking objectively what is going on in the mind. Try not to identify with the mind, but to distance ourselves from the mind and from everything which is going on in the stage of the mind. This is exactly the point which Krishna is making. And in this way, we ultimately will be able to transfer our consciousness from the miserable identification with this material world and material body into the blissful identification with the spiritual world and the spiritual body. We will turn our consciousness 180 degrees. We will withdraw our consciousness from this world and will be able to place our consciousness into the spiritual world. Whereas if we fall prey of this game of the mind, we will only concentrate on ourselves. As I said, there will be rumination, this false ego rumination. I. iPhone, iPad, iTunes, all this I mentality, I generation, all this I problems. I in mind, I in mind. It's not by chance this iPhone is called iPhone. It's my identity. There is a new phobia nowadays. It's already classified in the list of the disease. Nomophobia. Nomophobia means no mobile phone phobia. The fear to lose one's mobile phone because it's my identity. And in the same way as we attach to the mobile phone and all this whole happenings in the Facebook and all this kind of stuff, in the same way we're attached to our mind. And the more we attach, the more we suffer. So that's the most important thing, we have to be really clear what I want. And if you want to go to Krishna, it's very clear what you should do. You should tolerate what is going on in the mind. As Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita, Matra spasastu kaunteya shitoshna sukha dukkha daha. Agamapayana nityas tamsti tikshaso bharata. Be tolerant. Tolerate. Just tolerate. Tamsti tikshaso bharata. Some things you cannot really avoid. You cannot avoid, threefold miseries of this life. They will be there. Very mercifully, Krishna placed all these threefold miseries. You will suffer from your body. You will suffer from the agonies of your mind. You will suffer from other people. You will suffer from natural calamities, from coronavirus and all other stuff. It will take place. It will happen. But everything which we experience in our life is just a golden opportunity to train our tolerance, to train this quality. Trinadapi sunchina taroriva sahishnuna. Sahishnuna, it's this word sahishnuna is coming from sahasa. Sahasa means ability to tolerate, or the strength of the mind. Actually, the strength of the mind is really strong, means healthy. It means, we will be able to tolerate. Of course, we're not talking about the mind. We're talking about the soul, the ability of the soul to distance itself from this. So the last thing which I want to say, because it's already late, I actually didn't ask the organizers for how long I'm supposed to talk, but I don't want to go too much longer. So the last thing which I wanted to say is the benefit of this way of action. If we really try to train ourselves, train to tolerate what is happening with the mind, and train ourselves to distance from the abilities of the mind, then, as I said, the cloud of false ego will become thinner and thinner and thinner. It's actually explained by Lord Kapila Dev. What is false ego? False ego, ahankar, it's the creation of tamagun. It's a very tamasic creature. It's dark, it's very non-transparent, and it's applied on the transparent and sattvic chitta, which has beautiful qualities. So, and Prabhupada explains actually in the 3rd canto and 26th chapter, where Krishna defines all these things, the false ego and these 3 aspects of false ego, and chitta, 3 aspects of chitta. Srila Prabhupada explains, especially when Lord Kapila Dev is talking about chitta, he says the more one identify with the material world, with the material body, with the material mind, the thicker the cloud of ahankar becomes, and the more implicated one becomes into this material world, into the sufferings of the material world. So what will happen as a reward of this course of activities, when we act in such a way then to slacken our identification with the mind, as to slacken our false identity, our ahankar, the transparent nature of our consciousness will become more and more prominent. We will experience the real nature of the consciousness, Cheta Darpana Marjanam. The chitta, even though it's a material element, and in this material world we will have to somehow or other be connected with this, but if we are connected with transparent chitta, the less thick cloud, ignorant cloud of ahankara is there, the more real qualities of chitta we will experience, and these qualities of chitta are 3-fold. And they are explained again by Lord Kapila Dev in this 26th chapter of the 3rd canto. The first quality is transparency. The real chitta is transparent. Svachhatvam. Svachhatvam means, perhaps heard this slogan, Svacha India, the transparent, clean India. The first quality of chitta is transparency, Svachhatvam. And the next quality is Avikaritvam. It's not, there's no transformation in chitta. The chitta is not transformed. And the 3rd quality of chitta is Shantatvam. There's 3 aspects of chitta which are reflected in the 3 aspects actually of false ego, false identity. So the less cloud of false identity is there on the chitta, the more we will be able to experience these qualities. And that basically means, as being explained by Prabhupada and by Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur in the commentary of this verse, the first quality of chitta is Bhagavad Bimba Grahitvam. Then this transparent chitta will be able to reflect the image of Bhagavan. Bhagavan Bimba. Bimba means reflection. We will be able to feel the presence of Bhagavan. The less false ego is there, the more acute presence, or the more visible or vivid presence of Bhagavan we will experience in our life. Because chitta will reflect, Bhagavan is there. It's just because chitta is covered by the dust of material desires, because it's not clean. The more cleaner it is, the more, how to say it, the more vivid or the more clear this experience, spiritual experience will be there. And then Swachatvam is the first quality. Avikaritvam. Avikaritvam means that all these mental qualities which I described, I am sad, I am greedy, I am angry, they will dissipate. This is what Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur says. He says, Alasya, what is this? Alasya Rahitvams. Alasya, Vikshepa Alasya Rahityam. Vikshepa Alasya Rahityam. So all these mental qualities which we identify with will also dissipate. As much as it happens with Avanti Brahmana in the story, Avanti Brahmana, after being greedy, after cultivating all these bad qualities, all of a sudden, practically miraculously, became a completely transformed person. Why? Because he somehow or other, dissipated his false identity, this identification with the mind. So these qualities which we are victim of, which we cannot break free from, which we always experience, I'm angry and I am always fall prey of this anger, or I'm lusty person, I'm greedy person. We very much identify with them. So they're not there in chitta. They're in false ego, in this false connection. When this connection becomes slackened, then we will not be forced to conform with these mental qualities which are there. And the next quality of chitta, natural quality of chitta, which is there when it's not, how to say, when it's not contaminated by the false ego. The next quality, the third quality is Shantatvam. Shantatvam means Ragadi Rahityam. It means that we will become free from all these bad emotions, from the slavery of all these emotions which we experience, from fear and from other emotions. There is quite a difference between the qualities and emotions. Emotions is the manifestation of qualities. Anger is emotion, of course, but I'm an angry person. So one will be free from this identification with this trait of character, which is angriness, or how you say this properly in English. And then you will be free from the subsequent emotions which are there. This is Shantatvam. The original state of uncontaminated chitta, when it's clean, it's completely peaceful. It's reflecting the image of God there, and it's free from all these negative qualities which are more or less inflicted upon us by the modes of material nature. So this is the reward. And again, as I said, we have to be very clear. What is my course? What do I want? Do I want to get free from this and try to develop this quality of tolerance towards what is happening in the mind? Or I want to continue with this chain of being a victim, and sure enough it will be confirmed by merciful Lord. If you want to be victim, you will become victim, no problem. So the choice is ours, and Avanti Brahmana is giving us the alternative song. It would be good to record this song in iTunes and to play it in our iPhone regularly. This is the song of Avanti Brahmana. I am not this mind. I am not the qualities of the mind. I will just, I will tolerate what is happening. Nobody is actually bad. It's just, what is bad is only one thing, is my too much intimate connection with the mind. That's the only problem. There's no other problem. Everything else is fine. So this is what I wanted to say. And I don't know if there is time for questions, but in any case, thank you for tolerating me. You already started practicing this by tolerating my lecture. Thank you very much. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.
Thank you so much, Maharaj, for that class. It gives us a lot to reflect on in our lives, and you nicely structured it for us to understand also. You were mentioning the three aspects of the false ego and how we can overcome it in order to not fall victim to the material emotions, the mind when it becomes our enemy, and just the false ego in general. Before we do move on to questions, we have so many lovely questions. We just want to make an announcement for our next session. So you can all see on your screen, the next session will not be next week, but in 2 weeks' time on the 22nd of May, and it will be given by His Grace Nilamadhava Prabhu, who will be speaking about the untold pastimes of the Lord. This is going to be a slightly different session where it will be more story-based, so please do invite your family members as well to come and hear the sweet untold pastimes of the Lord. So we'll be moving on to questions now. Because of time, we will ask 3 questions, but most questions we have combined together as they're very similar. So the first question is from Yasmin Bright. So if we can unmute Yasmin Bright to ask her question.
Hare Krishna. I wanted to ask.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. I wanted to ask, how can we forgive our perpetrators for the suffering and make peace with it?
How we can forgive whom?
Our perpetrators.
Perpetrator. See, we have to understand that if we want to be free, we have to forgive. If we want to continue suffering, yes, somebody may inflict some pain to us, but now the choice is with us. Do we want to continue suffering the same pain, to reenact the same pain, to relive the same pain again and again and again by remembering our perpetrators, or we want to be free from this pain? If you want to be free from this pain, it's possible. So why it is so difficult, I will tell a few words, first of all, for those people who find it extremely difficult. It's natural for the mind to ruminate on the bad experiences. The mind is created in such a way that we are more easily ruminating over the bad things than on the good things. Whatever bad is there, the mind is more likely to return to it and to again and again, make the same movie. And we see it again and again and again. So in one sense, it's a natural tendency of the mind. It will be there, no problem. But if we want to take the control of our life, we have to understand that by keeping grudge within our heart, we're only inflicting pain to ourselves. Somebody gave a very nice simile. He says that to keep the offense, to keep this bad feelings, the pain of other, sufferings which somebody else, perpetrator did to us, it's the same as if we have the burning coals in our hands. And we are walking with these burning coals, awaiting the opportunity to throw these burning coals into his face. But in the meantime, we are working ourselves with these burning coals. And who is suffering? We are suffering more. It's not the fact that we will be able even to throw these coals, but they're there. The pain is there. So we have to, by our intelligence, to understand that there's no point, and by our intelligence, we will be able to break through. It's actually a question of developing strong intelligence, strong determination, and disconnecting all these experiences and saying that this is all basically due to my identification with the mind, and I want to finish with this identification. I don't want to continue with this. I don't want to remain the victim. I don't want to continue sufferings. So your question is how to forgive. To forgive is basically to withdraw the consciousness from this experience, understand the real cause of it, and this way, ultimately, it will heal. Whereas if we always relive the same thing, it will never heal. The wound which is inflicted will always be there. It's like this. If we have some little wound and some, blood is coming out, and when it becomes, it starts healing. And when it's healing, it's itching, right? When it becomes healing, it becomes healed. It starts itching. So as soon as it's itching, we scratch it again. And here you are, the blood is oozing again. So the same way we do this, we do with us. The pain becomes less and we start scratching it. No, I cannot do this. Let it be there. Because it becomes our self-identity. That's the problem. The pain created by somebody else. I'm not saying that they are right or wrong or whatever, but the pain becomes the part of our identity, and it's very difficult, and we emotionally invest into this identity very much, and it's very difficult for us to disassociate with this identity. So what we have to say, I am not this. I don't want to identify with this thing. I want to identify, I'm a devotee of Krishna. I want to identify with Radha and Krishna. In 2 weeks, Dinabandhu Prabhu will tell us untold stories of the Lord. I want to identify with this. I want to put my consciousness there. So this is basically what it is. We have to understand that the pain becomes part of our identity, and there's no point. It's really no point. There's no point to keep this false identity. That's it. When we are done with our false identity, we are done with all our pains and problems. So, but I understand it's easier to say than to do. I mean, I give a nice theory. I must admit, I not always practice it in my life. It's difficult, but it's possible. I mean, if the pain is very acute, it's difficult. But when pain becomes little less, it's actually easy disassociate with it.
Thank you so much. The next question are combined questions. So can we help other devotees when they have a situation like the one you described earlier about conflicting with another devotee? Or because it is due to self-perpetuating emotions in the mind, should we allow them to work things through themselves? And how do we practically weaken this identification with the mind?
We do have this facility to look from the neutral point of view within our onto what is happening within our mind. It's just a question to practice it on a daily basis, to look from this. And actually Lord Krishna explains this in the 5th chapter of Bhagavad Gita, where he says that someone who controls the mind, he sees what is happening with the body. The body is sleeping, the body is eating, the body is evacuating, the body is walking, but somebody is just absorbing it. This sakshitva, the position of observer, Srila Sanatana Goswami, he says a very beautiful thing. He says that actually humility means to be an observer. When we are involved very much in what is happening with us, with our life, emotionally involved, invested with this, that's not humility. That's basically false pride, false identity. Humility means to be an observer, to be the neutral observer, to observe from the neutral point of view. So we have this facility. Everyone can do it. Not everyone can do it in a very emotionally surcharged and emotionally strong situation, but in a more or less neutral day-to-day life, we can practice it. And then when the test will come, we will be able to also remain less afflicted by all the sufferings. We will be afflicted to a certain extent, but we will be more firmly fixed on the ground of our real identity. And of course, the daily practice which we do is to chant the holy name. And if we chant the holy name with this position, within this position of being an observer, which basically means Trinada Pisanichinata Vasa this identifying with the mind and everything, then Kirtanya Sadhari, and then this is the daily training. But outside of this chanting hours, we also can train ourselves in this observing what is going on in our mind and be more neutral and be less involved in it, basically. And that means to be tolerant. So this humility and tolerance, they're very much together, and they're very much connected with this position of an observer, sakshitva.
Thank you. The last question is from Amritanand Prabhu. So if we can unmute Amritanand Prabhu.
Yes.
Hare Krishna.
Yes, Amritanandji.
Hare Krishna Maharaj, please accept my humble obeisances. You mentioned about the magazine where, like Back to Prabhupada, and where there is a lot of criticism about Vaishnavas. One is tolerating your own criticism, and also on other hand, we sometimes hear through internet people inquiring about what they hear on internet and these magazines. So as a practicing devotee, should we kind of completely avoid those discussions, or we should how one should respond? Because if someone is inquiring, we probably may not go voluntarily to indulge in this kind of literature, but if someone is inquiring about these incidents or inquiring about what they have read in this different offensive literature, how do we respond to that inquiry? Should we just negate that, or should we just, what sort of approach one should take?
It depends. As I said already, the mind has the tendency, very strong tendency, extremely strong tendency to ruminate over the bad things. Much stronger tendency to ruminate over bad things than over good things. Mind is attached. Mind is very much negative fellow, and it's very much attached to the negative things. Therefore, people are naturally attracted to all this negative news. Therefore, you know, all the journalists, they know if they want to attract attention, they say something bad about somebody or some conspiracy theory or this and that. You know, the mind will just dive into it. So first of all, we have to explain to ourselves very clearly and to other people that we already have this tendency or the attraction to negative things. And this attraction to negative things only attracts negative things within our life. So if we don't want to attract negative things, we have to, you know, to do this, to more or less to finish this attraction towards negative things, which is already there. We definitely should not feed it. So by reading this and ruminating over this and spreading this and discussing this and, you know, going into all the details, we're more or less feeding the same natural quality of fault finding or you know, negative attraction. And in this way we invite negativity within our life, within our minds, and our whole life becomes completely negative. And Krishna consciousness is the most positive thing in the world. Krishna is the most positive. He is the most positive person. So first of all, we have to really clearly understand how this attraction to negative things spoils our own life. And we have to gradually unlearn this, or break free from this habit of being attracted to negative things, negative occurrences, negative qualities of other people. Because we're thriving. When we hear about this, we become excited. You know, oh, yeah, I always thought this. And when we hear about bad things which are done by other people, we're usually not very critical. We immediately, we have a lot of trust that other people are doing bad things. When somebody says something good about, we become a little skeptical, whether it's like this or not, it's not clear now. We're not jumping. But when somebody says something bad, we say, yeah, of course, I always knew it. Now it's only confirmed. So this is the first thing which we have to be very clear about. And if somebody is dependent on us, we have to explain to them in a very nice way. It's not a question of mind control or anything else. It's just a question of our own safety, spiritual safety, and actually even material safety, because if we don't want to attract negativity, we have to break free from this habit. So the second thing about this, I don't know. Okay. And the second thing about the concrete events which may be there. Usually people don't say open lies. They say the average percentage of lie within the lie is rather small. Average percentage, of course it's a joke, but usually it's something like 96% truth and 4% lie. So usually lie is very nicely camouflaged by the truth. It's a little lie, and on the top of it, there is a lot of truth. So this is what is going on in all these magazines and everything. They say something which may be true, but there is a rotten core into this seemingly truthful event or whatever description. And it's sometimes very difficult to discriminate between the lie and the truth. And usually people do, they swallow the pill, and because it's so attractive and so seemingly, correct and according to the truth. But with the pill, they also swallow the poison, which is the, like, for example, this theory that Prabhupada was poisoned. There are very intelligent people who believe in it, really believe in it. Because why? Because they want to believe in it. So the second thing which we have to understand is that there may be some truth, but it's not the complete truth. When we are talking about somebody else, we really have to understand what was happening in the context of his life. If we take it out of context, we will commit an offense. If we understand the motivations of other people, the problem is that we usually judge other people from the external point of view and never try to go a little deeper into their motivations. So then how to deal with this? If the person is really affected by this, either you have to discover the truth and explain to him the truth, like, for example, theory that Prabhupada was poisoned. There is one brave devotee in America, Maheshwar Prabhu, he published recently a book where he, more or less reveals all the fallacies of this theory, all the illogical things or whatever, factual mistakes and everything. So if you can do this, if you can show how within the truthful covering there is some lie there, it's good. If not, just in general, you say, if you have some doubts about certain person, actions of certain person, which are inflicted by this magazine or by your association with somebody, why don't you ask this person in a nice way? I heard this. Please tell me what's going on. Please explain to me. Or you ask somebody who is close to him, who knows him, who can explain this. So, and perhaps you will know something else, and you will know something which will make even, your connection with this person stronger. In other words, if you want to know the truth, try to know the truth not just by believing all this bad news, which is so easy and which is so tempting, but by really discovering the truth, going directly to the person, asking the straight questions in a nice way, begging him to dissipate your doubt which was created by these people.
Thank you, Guru Maharaj.
Thank you.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, thank you so much once again, Maharaj, for this lovely talk, very reflective, and for all of your answers. And we thank everyone who is on the call and who was on the call. Thank you so much. We hope to see you in 2 weeks' time for Nilamada Prabhu's talk on the Untold Pastimes of the Lord. What we will do, I know many devotees wanted to ask questions and give their thanks, so we will unmute everyone to give their thanks to His Holiness Bhakti Vijñana Goswami. So please give your...
Hare Krishna Prabhu, thank you very much.
Thank you, Maharaj.
Krishna.
Thank you, Maharaj.